Alrighty, so who's ready for a talking donkey? We will be in Numbers chapter 22 for our adult Sunday school class this AM. Sunday, February 1st of 2026. Happy new month. So let's go to our screen share here. And go over here. And so we are with the Lord's people in Numbers chapter 22. We'll be picking up in the second verse. So, as we are going across the Bible timeline, following the Lord's people, we are in summer, fall, second half of the year 1407 BC, which is Middle Bronze Age, layer 2b. Here at this particular moment in time, China is being led by Emperor Huairen of the Shang dynasty. Egypt over here is in its second intermediate period, low point. They're now being ruled by Pharaoh Mibri Sheshi of the 14th dynasty, which is the early Hyksos or lesser Hyksos foreigners who are taking advantage of the devastation of Egypt after the Exodus events. Over here in Babylon, we've got King Ammi-Saduqa ruling there. And with the Lord's people who have now moved up from Kadesh, had come back down to the Exodus Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba, come back around Edom and up through here. They're now over on this side, over here. And here's the Dead Sea, the Jordan River going up here, and there's the Sea of Galilee, and this is the Promised Land here. So as the Lord's people are settling over here after they've recently taken this land over from Og and Sihon, in the line of Christ, the tribe of Judah, we have currently alive on this new generation. The old generation has now officially all passed on except for Moses, Caleb, and Joshua. We have in the line of Christ, tribe of Judah, Salmon, who I put at about 19 years old here in 1407 BC. He is the 29th generation of Adam, and he will be father to Boaz and second great-grandfather to David. So getting into Numbers 22 and the event here is a brief description from Egyptologist David Rohl on how we got to this point. He mentions the progress of the Israelite horde eventually saw them camp down, which is where verse 1, where we left off, tells us, camp down on the plains of Moab. Now they're getting ready for the winter. Their great tented city was set at Abel Shittim, which is right here. There's Jericho there. So while they're spread out in this territory, this is kind of their headquarters where they're set up shop here at Abel Shittim. To the east of the Jordan River, just north of the Dead Sea, Brother Clay.
Earlier we used to, fall, get ready to come in the winter.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what kind of weather did they have in the winter, or did they just stay put every winter?
They are actually, if you were to draw a line across where we are in California's Central Valley and draw a straight line across, that's where Israel is. So as far as versus far up from the equator and far down from the North Pole, they're in the same area. So just as we experience a high desert climate and whatnot, and the Tehachapi Mountains get snow, they get snow, and so it was often said, especially in the Old Testament, that it would be after the winter snow that their battles will often happen in the springtime, where they're able to get back out from the winter camps and fight again. And so they were very much, of course, a weather-based society as far as what they were able to do and when they were able to do it. So they're basically getting ready to hunker down. The Jordan crossing will be in the spring. It'll be 1406 BC, 40 years after the Exodus of Nisan 14. Passover was Nisan 14 of 1446 BC, and the journey began that very next day, Nisan the 15th. And so this is this is the wind down of that last 40th year as they're continuing. So that kind of help with the perspective there. Yeah. He goes on to mention this after they've conquered the lands of Og and Sihon. Let's see here. There we go. So there's Abel Shittim. So yeah. So there that is right there. And so he mentions after they've had this conquering, news of the slaughter had quickly reached the people across the Jordan, and they were gripped with panic. For centuries, the region had seen relative peace, but now, from their perspective, a great calamity was about to descend upon the hills and valleys of Canaan from the east. The book of Joshua will record how peace and security died in this majestic landscape with the Israelite crossing of the River Jordan. The legacy of that traumatic time still lies behind the deep and abiding mistrust that exists between the sons of Abraham, the split up between Isaac and Ishmael and on down from there, and even the split we see from Jacob and Esau, and all that falls into play here. So we will be picking up in Numbers 22, verse 2, and as we deal with the account of the talking donkey, I will offer my perspective that looking at this, the talking donkey is not the only weird thing that happens here, or strange thing or questionable thing that takes place. So let's take a look. In Numbers 22, let's pick up in verse 2. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. Remember, the Amorites are not the Ammonites, descendants of Lot. So Moab was in great fear because of the people, for they were numerous. And Moab was in dread of the sons of Israel. Moab sent to the elders of Midian, now this horde will eat up all that is around us, as the ox eats up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was king of Moab at that time. Let me pause right there. So here's the area we're dealing with here with Moab on this side. Moab, keep in mind, is also a descendant of Lot, along with Ammon. But now, where God said, leave the sons of Lot alone, here the sons of Lot, descendants of Lot, are getting agitated over the Israelites here. So they're reaching out to the Midianites. Well, if Midian sounds familiar, that's down here. That's where Moses was for 40 years. So they're reaching down here to these folks. Now Midian was very supportive of the Israelites in the time of Moses' early days, and his father-in-law Jethro and all that stuff. His wife is from there, and they had their kids and all that stuff. So 40 years later, it's a different time. And now Israel being seen as a threat. So Moab is reaching down to Midian saying, hey, we got to compare notes and get something going here because these guys are a problem. So what do they do about it? So verse 5. So he sent messengers to Balaam the son of Beor at Pethor, which is near the Euphrates River, in the land of the sons of his people, to call for him, saying, behold, they have covered a people come out of Egypt. Behold, they have covered the surface of the land, and now they are living opposite me. So we pause right there. So Balaam, the king of Moab, is reaching out to, Balak, the king of Moab, is reaching out to Balaam at Pethor. Pethor is pretty much understood to be out here, which in the Assyrian Empire was Pirfu. So they're up there in the north. So he's saying, hey, while we've got these Israelites over here, you come on over and curse these folks for us because we're scared and they're a threat. So he's sending folks out there to this guy. Verse 6. Now therefore, please come curse this people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I'll be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. So he's going to send them messengers on up with that message to Balaam here in Pethor. So they're going all the way ahead, reaching to this guy. They're realizing we don't have the military might to defeat these Israelites. So we want you to, as a spiritual prophet, we want you to curse these guys so that's how they can be kept at bay and overcome, and we can be delivered and protected. So just right there raises some questions. So who is this guy Balaam that they're reaching out to? And what is his spiritual reality? What's the spiritual reality of where he is? How does the Lord view this guy, Balaam, spiritually? And that's what we're going to explore, and that's where the talking donkey comes into play here. So let's see what we learn about this guy. Verse 7, so the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian, so they joined forces, they left with the fee for divination in their hands. And they came to Balaam and repeated Balak's words to him. And he said to them, spend the night here, and I'll bring you back to you just as the Lord may speak to me. And the leaders of Moab stayed with Balaam. Then verse 9, God came to Balaam and said, who are these men with you? Pause there. When God asks a question, it's not that he doesn't know the answer. It's that he's going somewhere with his asking. Adam, where are you? God knew. The same thing here. So, but notice, whatever Balaam's spiritual place is, God is now having a conversation with him and asking him a question. So, and Balaam responds in verse 10. Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent word to me. Behold, there is a people who came out of Egypt, and they cover the surface of the land. Now come curse them for me. Perhaps I'll be able to fight against them and drive them out. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So Balaam got up in the morning and said to Balak's representatives, go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. And the representatives from Moab got up and went to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come to us. So just pausing to take in this moment here. So whatever the spiritual deal is with Balaam, he petitioned God, God addressed him, and he got his answer from God, and he honored God's answer to him and told these people no. Okay, so far we're in line with God, and we'll see from there, because we know God said, these are my people, I'm blessing them. So the curse isn't going to happen. So what happens next? Verse 15. Then Balak sent representatives once again, more numerous and more distinguished than the previous. They came to Balaam and said to him, this is what Balak, the son of Zippor, says, I beg you, let nothing keep you from coming to me. For I will indeed honor you richly, and I will do whatever you tell me. Please come then, curse this people for me. Let me pause right there. So this guy, descendant of Abraham's nephew Lot, here king of Moab, got his answer from God through Balaam. Didn't like the answer God had given him through Balaam. So he's wanting a spiritual curse, but he's not liking the spiritual answer he's getting. So what is he doing? He's upping the ante with physical things. Okay, let me send more distinguished people. Let me give more gifts and presents and more lavish. Let me show them how serious I am with the things of the world. Balak is trying to use the things of the world to overcome the spirit. So that's what's happening here. So from there, oh, okay. Tim. So verse 18. But Balaam replied to the servants of Balak, even if Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything, either small or great, contrary to the command of the Lord my God. Stop right there, just that verse. Kudos to Balaam for that statement on face value. That is the right thing to say. No matter what earthly stuff you throw my way, I can't be bribed to go contrary to what's spiritually right in the sight of the one true God. He even calls him my God. Okay, on face value, so far so good. If you can't tell, it's not going to stay that way. So, verse 19. Now please, you also stay here tonight, and I will find out what else the Lord will say to me. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men have come to call you, rise and go with them. but you shall do only the thing that I tell you. In verse 21, so Balaam arose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the leaders of Moab. Stop right there. Question. Did God change his mind? No. Did God know what he wanted to do through this and what was going to happen? Of course. So God initially saying no and then saying yes is not God being wishy-washy. It's God has a purpose and an intention and a plan and a direction. And he is, by the initial delay, he is upping the ante here. This is coming to a head here and a climax for a reason. And it involves very much Balaam here and how he's going to go here. This whole event and the next couple chapters are really fascinating character study of this human being, Balaam. So God says very carefully, go with him, but you shall do only the thing that I tell you. So the key to understand what's about to happen is that God has a very specific intention with what he's going to do here. And we pause with that. Hey, Brother Tim. Can the same action be a sin in one circumstance and not a sin in another circumstance? Actually, yes. Can an action, the same action, be a sin in one circumstance and not a sin in another circumstance? It actually can. So here's the explanation of this, and this factors very much into this and helps us understand what might otherwise be confusing with this event. If I look at Ananias and Sapphira, Ananias and Sapphira of Acts chapter 5, they sold land and gave money to the church just like everyone else did. In fact, that was unfortunately their motive for doing it because everyone else was doing it. So they wanted to keep up with the Joneses. But they got struck dead. Why? Because they were deceitful in their actions and their explanation of their actions. So the act, it was really, the act wasn't the issue for God through the Holy Spirit, through the Apostle Peter. It was their heart. Remember, Jesus said it's what's in the heart that defiles you. And so their same act that the others were doing did them no good because they did it with the wrong motive and with deception in there. It was theirs to do it as they were free to do it as they pleased. They could sell the land and keep all the money. They could give some of the money to the church, all the money to the church. They weren't required to do anything. But it is the fact that they did the same act as others, but with a different motive and with deception involved. Lying to the church is lying to the Holy Spirit, which is lying to God. Boom, dead. New Testament. So, what's that have to do with Balaam and Balak here? So, Balak the king asking for Balaam the prophet to come curse Israel in Numbers 22. So, God, as we see in verse 20, go with them, you shall do only the thing that I tell you. God is very, very specific with what he wants here. So, let me put it this way. This will help fill in and color in what's going on with the human being, Balaam here. So God has a motive, and he wants to use a human being to accomplish his motive. With God having his motive, can a human being go about God's desire, but with their own motive and with their own attitude, perspective, agenda, all of that stuff? Yes, absolutely. Was God just happy that what his mission is getting accomplished, or is he going to take issue with the contrary approach? He's obviously going to take issue with the contrary approach. Even though on the surface there's obedience to what God said, God cares absolutely how we do even more than what we do. God cares about what we do, don't get me wrong. But all of what we do in the world means nothing if we don't get right the how or why we do. And so all of this I'm setting up now to help us understand what's about to happen. So let's read verse 20 again, and we'll go down to verse 22 and just stop there. Verse 20, God came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men have come to call you, rise and go with them. but you shall do only the thing that I tell you. So Balaam arose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the leaders of Moab. Verse 22, but God was angry that he was going. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the road as an adversary against him. Now he was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. Stop right there. Verse 20, God said go. Verse 22, God was angry that he was going. How is that not a contradiction in God and in the Bible? What the hey? What's going on here? Well, it's everything I just said. And we'll learn more about Balaam as we go on into later chapters. We're unpeeling the onion layers of this guy here. There's more than meets the eye that's on the surface here. Just on surface value, that's a contradiction. So God's contrary, God's word is contrary, just chuck it all then. It's not holy and pure. He isn't and his word isn't. That's not the case here at all. God is consistent, God knows what he's doing, and he is basing his actions and his decisions here on what he's being given to work with. So there's something wrong with how Balaam was going, with Balaam's attitude, with Balaam's focus. So he was no longer of the attitude of whatever God says is what's going to do. I can't do anything contrary to God. Well, there's something about Balaam going here that's contrary to God, Brother Clay.
Could it be because they up the ante?
Anything's possible.
I won't do it for $1 million. $10 million?
Yeah.
Let me have thought again.
Yeah. But we're told that on their second trip, he initially rejected their physical offerings. And he said even further, even if, in verse 18, even if he were to give me his own house, full of silver and gold, I could do nothing either small or great, contrary to the command of the Lord. So it seems like it wasn't financial or physical motive here. So Balaam's kind of a mystery that we're unraveling here. So someone who had been so great in what he said about his being in lockstep with the Lord, he clearly, from verse 20 to verse 22, has somehow fallen out of step with the Lord, even when he's on the surface doing what God said. So that's a hugely important lesson for us. We can be on the surface doing what God said, but if something's rotten in the cotton here, it's not going to count for anything. God wants us to do things from the inside out. God wants us to be right with them on the inside and then have the outward reflect that. And so we can't just have things have the outward appearance of obedience while something's not right inside. There's something wrong with Balaam here, and we're going to explore that more as we go, and we'll discover. So, verse 23. Well, let's do 22 again. God was angry that he was going. And my proposal is that God is angry with how he's going, and we'll talk about that. So God was angry that he was going, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the road as an adversary against him. Now he was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with the sword drawn in his hand, the donkey turned off from the road and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to guide her back onto the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path of the vineyards, with a stone wall on this side and on that side. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pressed herself against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went farther and stood in a narrow place where there is no way to turn to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam was angry and struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times?" And Balaam said to the donkey, "It is because you have made a mockery of me. If only there had been a sword in my hand, for I would have killed you by now." But the donkey said to Balaam, Am I not your donkey on which you have ridden all your life to this day? Have I ever been in the habit of doing such a thing to you? And he said, no. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed all the way to the ground. And just pause right here. So, I mentioned in the beginning that the donkey talking is not necessarily the strangest thing about this passage. So, angel of the Lord, donkey sees it. Sometimes the animal kingdom is more in tune with the Lord than humans are. So the angel is seen by the donkey. So the donkey goes off the road into the field, gets whacked by Balaam, and brought back around. So they go into this passage where through the vineyard, we got stone walls on either side. There's the angel. So the donkey goes off to the side into the wall, mashing Balaam's foot in the saddle there. So Balaam whacks the donkey again and goes on from there. So then the angel of the Lord goes on ahead to a place where there's no turning left or right. So the donkey, seeing the angel, just plops right there, lays down in place. You can see that as a bow of submission and humility and all of that. And so Balaam, again, we're following the humanity of this person here. Balaam is getting more and more worked up as we go here. And so finally at this breaking point, this third time, and he lashes out at her. And so we see in verse 28, and what I'm going to bring out here shows how far in Balaam's world Balaam had gone. 28, the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey and said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? Verse 29 is the key here. And Balaam said to the donkey, and I'm just going to stop right there. This is the key indicator that something is way off with Balaam. If we just think about this for a moment. You're out with your cow. You're out with your horse. You're out with your dog or your cat, or in with your cat, or unless you're Cinder and you're out on your leash. And something's happening. You're fussing at the animal, and the animal looks back at you and speaks in your language, and then you respond to the animal. Here's the thing. Here's what normally would happen with a normal person. Come on, animal. Come on, animal. Hey, why are you here? You talked. Did anyone else see this? I got 2 guys with me. The animal, forget the conversation. Just the fact that the animal talked would stop the presses. And I'm being extroverted here for a reason here. He wasn't fazed by it. He was so caught up that he didn't care if it was a donkey he was talking to. He's saying, I'm doing what I want to do, and you are hindering what I'm trying. You're getting in the way of what. In fact, what did he say? You have made a mockery of me. So you can't be mocked if you're by yourself. So it's saying, you are making me look bad in the presence of my servants here. So there's ego involved. So there's a very ungodly human factor involved in all of this rage and determination. And so Balaam doesn't even care that he's having a conversation with a donkey. That's no news to him. It's the fact that he is just so enraged that his plan isn't going the way he wanted it to go. That's pretty far gone, if you ask me. So this is showing a little more about there's something off about Balaam here. Okay? And any other reactions or thoughts on where we're at so far? Yeah. So, the donkey responds to him. Again, verse 30. The donkey said to Balaam, Am I not your donkey on which you've ridden all your life to this day? Have I ever been in the habit of doing such a thing to you? And he answered, No. When you're having a conversation with a donkey, and the donkey is the one logical part of the conversation, something's wrong. Okay? The donkey's having to reason with him. Then the Lord finally steps in. Okay, verse 31. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, with his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed all the way to the ground. The man has finally caught up to the donkey, who had already bowed in submission. Verse 32. Then the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, and here's a key. I have come out, this is God speaking to Balaam. I have come out as an adversary because your way was reckless and contrary to me. Pause right there. There's the whole problem right there. Even though on the surface God said go, and Balaam was going, how Balaam was going in his humanity was, in the eyes of God, reckless and contrary to me. So God, back in verse 22, was angry. And so that's why the angel of the Lord was there. Hey buddy. The donkey got it. Took the human a while to catch on. So he said again, behold, I have come out as an adversary because your way was reckless and contrary to me. But the donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. Now get this. If she had not turned away from me, I certainly would have killed you just now and let her live. Here's the prophet telling the donkey, if I would have had a sword, I would have killed you. I'm so mad. Here's now God saying, if it weren't for the donkey's obedience, I would have killed you. So the donkey saved his life. Verse 34. So Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know that you were standing in the way against me. Now then, if it is displeasing to you, I will turn back. But the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but you shall speak only the word that I tell you, which is exactly what he said in verse 20 before the journey. So Balaam went along with the representatives of Balak, and we'll stop there with that. So Balaam is catching up to speed on the spiritual significance here. He says, well, okay, if that's how you feel, then if it's wrong for me to be going, I'll turn and go back. But the going was never the issue. God said go. It's how he was going. And so God said, no, keep going, but stay with me. Stay lockstep with me as you go. That is the key. And so they go on from there. And we'll pause this and see what 2 Peter has to say about this. But before 2 Peter, any other thoughts or reactions to this event here? And yes, it's Rash.
Well, I don't know if I'm off the mark here, but
What you got?
in the verse better to, what is it, obey and sacrifice?
Yes, that's huge. Hugely relevant.
Because sometimes you do go, and sometimes you might not be with God or with God as closely as you'd like to be, but you know enough to know that you need to be doing what God
Oh,
wants
I'm
you to
so
do.
glad you said that.
And you're just holding on, hoping you can get to the end.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Because there is a night and day difference between the two. And it's very important that that line is clear for every single one of us. Sister Ashley just brought up the example she brought up 2 very important things. One, how Samuel told King Saul to obey is better than sacrifice. God doesn't care that you spare these animals from the Amalekites and you're going to sacrifice them to God. God cares that you disobeyed him. God said, wipe out everything, don't take any booty. And so your sacrifice means nothing to God because you're not obeying. To obey is better than sacrifice. Don't do great things for God if you're not doing what he says. He's not impressed. So there's that very true point. So God wasn't impressed that Balaam is going. He's because he's obeying with the wrong attitude. Now, to Sister Ashley's other second powerfully important point. Sister Ashley mentioned, and I want to make sure I understand this and I get this right. We can sometimes find ourselves when it comes to obeying and getting up and going and serving and showing up to church and doing other things that we know God expects of us, commands us. Sometimes We can be bored, we can be weak, we can maybe not have a good night's sleep, we could, or maybe have a fight with a family member, or whatever else distracting us, or some tragedy happens and we're affected by that, something else going on where we're not all sunshines and rainbows as we're about the Lord's business. Does that mean our heart's not in it? I would say no. Being worn, being weak, being weighed down does not mean you're better not to do. What it means is you're understandably doing in a limited capacity, but you're still doing. Here's when you should not do it, is if you're doing it like Balaam with a heart that is contrary to God. Weakness versus rebellion. Having an attitude that is contrary to God is sin, it is rebellion. There are no works you can do that will whitewash that. God is not impressed. But if you're desiring to do the right thing, if your heart's in the right place and you're wanting to do the right thing, you're just not fully charged, and so you would love to be shining at 100 watts, but you're right now at 45. But you're still here. You're still trying. That's what the Lord cares about far more than the grade at the end on the execution. He cares about your heart being with Him and being willing. And so that's where grace comes in. And so there's a night and day difference between, don't feel that because you're wore down or distracted or dealing with so many things, any one of us, that you're being a hypocrite or you're living a lie by doing the God things when your heart's not fully in it or you're not feeling it. No, the right thing is the right thing. That's how marriages work. We do right by each other even when we're not always feeling it, because it's bigger than a feeling. Church is a marriage. We do right because it's the right thing, even if we're not always feeling it, not always able to give the 110% that we would like to be able to give. But if we're doing it because our heart wants the marriage, our heart wants the fellowship with the Lord, then that's all He cares about. He's not interested in the execution grade results at the end of the accomplishment. He's interested in the heart that's with Him. So that's all He cares about. This was a night and day difference. Here, God was rejecting Balaam because his heart was contrary in rebellion, was focused on his own agenda. Even if he was going along with what God said, he had a contrary human agenda that had to be corrected before he could proceed any further. So does that help with that difference there between the two? I don't want anyone to feel that they are not accepted by God because they are wore down and at a lesser capacity. Brother Clay.
Another thing about Balaam in verse 34, I have sinned, for I did not know that he was standing in the way. That tells a lot about his lack of integrity, right? Because he just told him, well, I'm not going to, I'm on my way to steal or whatever, and then somebody sees you. Or you say something, and that, if I had known you were there, I would not have gone, but I did not see you standing there. That, to me, that says that, he's trying to sneak one by. I don't know, Dave. Is it a stretch?
Possibly verse 34, so I wouldn't have done it if you were looking. It's more a case of he should have been able to see the angel. But because he didn't have spiritual eyes to see, even though he's called to do a spiritual thing, he was too caught up in the flesh to be spiritually minded. And so he was spiritually blinded to the angel there. So what he's saying here, I've sinned because I didn't know you were standing in the way. Why didn't he know is the real question. He should have known, especially if he was as in tune with God as he was professing to be at the beginning of this. So clearly his words and his reality were not in sync together. And so he should have, the animal was his harbinger. The animal was his sign. Hey, something's off the mark here. Something's not. And the fact that the animal spoke to him in his language, that should have been enough. Okay, something beyond normal is happening here. Something bigger than I was trying to dominate this donkey with my agenda. Wait a minute, this donkey talking and having conversation? Okay, that's bigger than my agenda now. I need to reset here, realign here, recalibrate. But he didn't. He argued with the donkey and lost. And so, yeah.
Maybe he was speaking donkey.
I won't get into the older translations and now. Anyway, yes. But let's close in 2 Peter. We want to get a New Testament perspective here. And we are not done with Balaam. He will come about later, and we'll see how far he actually goes. But 2 Peter, we'll close here. After Hebrews, after James, and 1 Peter. 2 Peter chapter 2. So we'll pick it up in verse 10, which verse 10 is the end of one paragraph and beginning of a next. So it's the middle of a sentence, but you'll get the context here as we go. So 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 10, closing here. And especially those who indulge the flesh in its corrupt passion, despise authority. Now he goes on, new sentence, new paragraph, but still verse 10. Reckless. And pause right there. What did God say in Numbers 22? Leviticus, Numbers, I should have kept the page there. Numbers 22, God said, your way was reckless. In Numbers 22:32. In contrary, same word, interesting. So, 2 Peter 2:10, reckless, self-centered. They speak abusively of angelic majesties without trembling, whereas angels, who are greater in might and power, do not bring a demeaning judgment against them before the Lord. But these, like unreasoning animals, born as creatures of instinct to be captured and killed, using abusive speech where they have no knowledge, will in the destruction of those creatures also be destroyed. Pause right there. So Balaam is being reduced to an animal state where the animal is being better than he was. Verse 13. Suffering wrong is the wages of doing wrong. They count it a pleasure to revel or party in the daytime. They are stains and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions as they feast with you, having eyes full of adultery that never cease from sin, enticing unstable souls, having hearts trained in greed, accursed children, abandoning the right way. Verse 15. They have gone astray, having followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the reward of unrighteousness. But he received a rebuke for his own offense. For a mute donkey, speaking with a human voice, restrained the insanity of the prophet. Which I wrote, how crazy is that? So, closing here on this, Peter, writing 2 Peter chapter 2, is talking about in New Testament age, there are people who are going to be having in church, who are going to be having the wrong focus, who are going to be looking out for themselves, having their own agendas, who are going to be seeking their own pleasure and their own benefit, not being spiritually minded or spiritually disciplined. Part of discipleship is the discipline, being in that discipline, including deceptions and eyes that are just seeking after these things. In verse 15, abandoning the right way. He's talking about church people. He's writing to church people about church people, and how church people in modern church times can fall into doing and being what Balaam was. And Balaam had to be corrected by a mute donkey. And so he got rebuked for his, he loved the reward of unrighteousness. He liked what he was getting that was not from God. And so there was some issue there, and more of that will come up. But we'll end there for this morning. We'll pick up back in Numbers 22 with how we go from there. But any further thoughts, comments, or questions or reactions to the encounter of Balaam with the donkey with the angel of the Lord? All good for now? Alrighty, so feel free to read on for next Sunday in Numbers 22 and 23. With that, we'll go ahead and stop our screen share here and stop our recording for class, and we'll get ready to go before the Lord in song and our praise and worship together.